welcome three of the Klingenstein Center's alumni tonight to share with you their leadership journeys and most importantly to tell you about the programs they have developed to help other educators of color advance in independent schools. Let me just briefly describe the Klingenstein Center and its programs. We have not only 5 programs, as you can see there, a Summer Institute for Early Career Teachers, that is a 2-week intensive program during the summer that focuses on teaching and learning, and that is completely a fellowship program. Applications are due January 15th, so as soon as this webinar is over, you can start writing your application. The program is completely funded by the Klingenstein Center, so 2 weeks of excellent programs and great food. If you apply and get selected for that program, we hope you will. There's another short-term program on the bottom there, the Heads of Schools program. Send your heads of schools to us for 2 weeks, January to February, and I promise they'll come back happier, smarter, more connected, and they too go through a rigorous program that helps them return to what they got into education for in the first place, which is really the academic program, and they come back very excited to work with their schools again. We have 3 degree programs. One is a master's program in private school leadership that is offered during the year, September to May, very intensive program. And another of the same curriculum that is offered for 2 consecutive summers with work in between at the school site. So you can keep your job and attend during the summer and also do work in your available free time, which we know is very limited, but still our students manage to do it. So two different options for the masters. And then there's a new degree that we have which combines an MA, one of those 2 MA degrees, with an MBA, a Master's in Business. And students can attend during the summer, attend year long, and then get an MBA at Columbia Business School or go to France and study at INSEAD, an international business school that is 2 campuses in France and Singapore. So lots of options and lots of things to dream about if you've always wanted to go to Singapore and travel in Asia. But the person who is very helpful with admissions, in fact, overseas admissions and financial aid, is Pete Simpson. Pete is the person to call at the Klingenstein Center, 212-678-6666, and he is highly knowledgeable about different options for you to enroll in the programs and get support, scholarships, and loans. So please do call him. Or if you have any other problems, call Pete. He solves all of your problems. Very, very, very helpful. So that's what we offer at the center, and our panelists have participated in at least one, and some have participated in 2 of our programs. I'd like to introduce our panelists. Dennis Biscard, who is the head of Kingswood Oxford School since 2006. He has served as a teacher, coach, administrator at schools in Massachusetts, New York, and Denmark. He is a 1996 graduate of the full-year master's program and was also awarded a fellowship to participate in the 2015 Heads of Schools program. He's had an impressive career, including a PhD equivalent in British and American literature from Odense University in Denmark. And it is Dennis who founded the Kingswood Oxford Leadership Institute for Educators of Color. We also have Noni Thomas Lopez. Noni is the assistant head of Agriculture Fieldston School since 2014. She has served as a teacher and administrator at Calhoun and at Nightingale Bamford here in New York City. She is a 2006 graduate of the full-year master's program where she received a fellowship, and she founded the Interschool Leadership Institute for Educators of Color. Finally, we have Susan Jamesky, who comes the greatest distance to be here from Atlanta. So welcome, Susanna, special welcome. She is head of the Galloway School since 2012. Prior to Galloway, she was the executive director of the Center for the Advancement and Study of International Education and head of the upper school at Atlanta International School. She has also taught in Germany and London. Susanna was also awarded a fellowship to participate in the 2015 Heads of Schools program. And this summer, she is going to tell you about a program that she's launching, the Bold Summit Atlanta for Educators of Color. So, welcome, panelists, and we look forward to hearing from you. So, I have some questions that I hope we can answer. We don't have to go in order. You can let me know if you'd like to answer by just raising your hand. Let's start with your early career. We'd like to know what challenges you faced early in your career and how you met those challenges. So, Noni, if you want to start, you look ready to start.
Sure. This actually was a hard question for me to answer because when I thought about my early career, thank you, sorry. When I thought about my early career, there weren't so many challenges. The image came to mind of kind of you hitting the pavement and it not going your way and you kind of sticking in there. And I think I was blessed to be, my first school here in New York City was Little Red Schoolhouse in Elizabeth Irwin High School. And I was there for 9 years, and I was very lucky to have mentorship there and opportunities to explore leadership, to propose a position that I ultimately fulfilled, and to be in a school that I really believed in. And so I think that, you always face challenges, in your career, but the fact that I was in a school where I had support and believed in its mission really helped me kind of get through those difficulties. I guess one of the lessons in there is that for folks looking at leadership opportunities in schools, not to take a position just to get the position. It's really important that you're in a place that speaks to who you are as a leader, that reflects your values, and so when those inevitable challenges do come, you feel like you're pushing through them for a purpose that means something very deeply to you.
Thank you. So focus on mission. Anna?
I would agree with Noni that I wouldn't necessarily look back at the early years as challenging, particularly. If anything, perhaps being a woman more than an educator of color was challenging in that it was never a good time to start a family, and when do you get married, and when does all of that fall into place, because realistically you have to not be at school if you're going to have a child and those kinds of things. So those are things for me to consider along the way. My family, we have moved around a lot, which actually could be a challenge, but in my case, I chose to embrace it as an opportunity, and each time I've moved, I've kind of ended up with a leg up. What it does mean is that my resume looks pretty scattered, and it can frighten some people, but I have intentionally moved, and sometimes countries, in order to get the next position up. And I think sometimes you have to be prepared that it's not going to just fall into your lap in your current school. You have to look elsewhere, and even perhaps outside of the profession of teaching itself, in order to get the leadership that you want to move ahead.
Thank you.
Noni and I spoke just before the program, and we actually agreed. Didn't really have face about challenges. And I think in part it depends a little bit on what school you are in, and match there. I think when I first started at the Bryn Mawr School in Baltimore, Maryland, my biggest, I guess the reason I didn't have a challenge is I actually came into the independent school very naively. I had just moved to the States, and I thought school is a school is a school. So I had absolutely no concept of the kind of wealth, the So, I was allowed a lot of elbow room, they accepted this foreigner. Barbara Chase was a phenomenal leader who was able to put folks in various places. There was lots and lots of diversity. I was introduced to the People Conference, way back when, but there were very few people there. So it was actually a great journey. And I have to say, I never for a second thought about becoming an administrator. I like to teach, I like to coach, I like to be with the kids, I like my peers. So it was actually other folks who tapped me and said, you're pretty good at this, and try this over here. So it's not something that I've at all planned. At one point, when I was going to move to New York City, I was looking for another teaching position, and people talk about parallel move. I said, what's a parallel move? It's like, I want to just teach over there instead. So there was this whole notion about steps, and I've never followed that. And I think you have to be careful, not simply attaining a leadership position to see how that's what you think is the next thing to do. It has to be natural and authentic, I think.
Thank you. Thank you, Dennis. Okay. So what experience has played the largest role in your path to your current leadership position? What experience has played the largest role in your path? Want to answer that, Susanna?
Well, so I had a slightly non-traditional route to my current position. Just before starting at the Galloway School as head, I was running a non-profit in Atlanta, and we were providing professional development to teachers, about 5,000 teachers a year across the Americas. Big successful consulting business, if you like, along with it. So I was doing a lot of travel and really enjoying it. And at the time, I was not looking for a head of school position, and sometimes it happens, just as you're really enjoying your job, someone comes with an even more interesting prospect. But that role as running a non-profit, at the time, I didn't really think how it might prepare me for the next step back into the school. But what it did was it exposed me to K-12 education, and I'm at the head of a K-12 school. The buck stopped with me as the executive director of a non-profit. I had to suddenly really understand the finances, not just peripherally as I had done as a principal of a high school. I was responsible for the pay for everybody on my team, and figuring out the HR aspects of that. It suddenly was everything. And truthfully, a head of school does an awful lot more than being involved in education, sadly. I wish every day were focused on pedagogy and instruction for kids, but that's not the reality of what we do. And I felt very, very prepared going into my current role because of running this nonprofit. So I guess I wasn't necessarily looking to either go into the nonprofit in the first place or to go onto a head of a school position afterwards, but the two positions have ended up being so helpful for one another. Not to mention, now being in my role, I have made a tremendous number of contacts in my previous position, which have ended up being invaluable. I have colleagues across the country. The professional development that we were providing was very much linked to the International Baccalaureate, the IB, which is one of the biggest growing curricula in the world. And as a result, I had literally colleagues in 50 states and all the Americas, as I said, so you could pick up the phone at any point. In my current role as the head of school, I feel as if I have a ton of people I can call and ask, very safe people because they're not in Atlanta, so I don't have to air my dirty laundry. And it's really easy to just pick up the phone and speak to people from a previous life. So a non-traditional route, I'm certainly what they would call a non-traditional candidate in Atlanta being a head of school. And I think that was a very valuable experience.
Thank you. Nani, you want to talk about an experience that has been very valuable in your current leadership?
I thought of three, and I'll try to be as brief as possible, but one was the Cleveland School Teaching Institute, and that's the program Dennis founded. I've known Dennis since 1996. We're in our 20th year together. And the program was important for me because it was the first time I was in a space with other educators of color, many of whom who had attended independent schools as I did, who looked like me, or kind of speaking the same language. I had leaders in front of me of color who were in independent schools, which is something that was new to me. Dennis, Wanda Holland Green, who was my advisor at CSTI, So to have a space where I could kind of see myself on a leadership path because of Dennis, because of Wanda, because of others, plus the skill set that I learned around honing my teaching craft, around understanding independent schools, around understanding New York City, really kind of set me on a path where I had the confidence to really take on, I think, teaching and leadership in independent schools. The second was Klingenstein, and again, that was a confidence builder for me, but also gave me an understanding of the broader world of education beyond independent schools. And there's where I really got an understanding of education as a common good and the relationships, important relationships between public schools and independent schools, and seeing myself in that larger context, not just in the world of private schools. And the last is actually a course that I took in my doctoral studies at the University of Pennsylvania, led by Annie McKee, who wrote Resident Leadership around leadership and social and emotional intelligence. And for me, I kind of intellectually got the connection between emotional intelligence and leadership, but that course really crystallized for me the transformational power of EQ and leadership. It's kind of my foundation, philosophical foundation as a leader. It's what I kind of built the ILI, the program that I'll talk about tonight. That's the foundation of that program. And it's really been transformational for me in terms of how I think about leadership and leadership development.
So several different strands have led to this path for you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Dennis?
I think initially, probably most importantly, is that I've lived in a number of different countries. I speak a number of different languages. So oftentimes I have the ability, because of my background, to kind of be an inside and outside at the same time. And that dual vision, I think, is very, very helpful. I would say the same, the Klingenstein program that I did in '96. What was most powerful about the program, it wasn't just the program itself, but it was actually, I was a senior administrator at collegiate school right here in New York City. And so suddenly getting this theoretical framework while you're working in an institution, so when you talk about the psychology of an organization, oh my God, I can see it right here. It was very, very powerful. And there are books, there are messages that stuck with me since that program. You know, one thing I still use to this day is the notion of, as a leader, there are times where you're on the dance floor in the midst of all the chaos of everybody else. And then there are times you need to get on the balcony and actually look from above, because you have to be in different positions. You know, Noni talked about that. She and I have known each other since 1996. John Yu was also in that program in 1996. Although oftentimes, as people of color, we think we don't quite have the same access to the power structure in independent schools, which might be true. On the other hand, as people of color, it's such a close-knit network, and the People of Color Council would have you. So when I was a relatively young educator, I could walk up to Rita Bowers, to Lucinda Lee Katz, to Rudy Jordan, to other seasoned educators of color. And as a young teacher, I actually had access to them. I had their attention, and they would be very, very helpful. The last thing I must say is the board chair at Shady Hill School with David Thomas, who's now leading the Georgetown Business School. He told me two things that I thought was really powerful. He said, never aspire, when you interview, never be an aspiring something, right? You have to interview as if you already have the role, as if you already have the job. The other thing he said is, never let other people interpret you. You interpret yourself to everybody when you interview.
Oh, powerful lesson. What you've learned well. Thank you very much. Okay, so each of you has developed, in one case is developing, a new program, and that have been very successful. It's very hard to develop a new program, but you've done it. You know, and we'd love to hear about your programs. Dennis, why don't you start to talk about your program?
I started one program in 1995 that ran for a number of years. About 6 years ago, I guess, I served on the NAS board. And the NAS board at the time met with all kinds of national search firms. And we talked about how come out of 1,700 schools, there's only about 60 heads of color, right? If you do the math, it's about, that's under 4%. Women don't look much better. And then if you really break it down, there are not very many women who lead, pre-K, 12 schools. Oftentimes people of color or women are in the, kind of nursery, elementary school, what have you. So they're all kind of disparities. So the search firms really talk about, national, the boards, what have you. You tend to hire folks like yourself. How do you break the system? And basically, we had a big conference, but nothing really came out of it. What I thought is, okay, this is a huge problem, but the way you attack a huge problem is you take a little corner. So I actually called Pearl, I called Orpheus Crutchfield from Strategy Genius, I called Warren Reed, and I told him I have an idea. Why don't we create a program for folks who have about 7+ years experience and try to teach them all we know about leadership and how to navigate the system? They thought it was a good idea. I said, when are you going to do it? I said, I'm going to do it in 3 months. So I had a pilot program in 2012, and there was about 15 folks who showed up. And what was interesting was there was a real need, and to be in a cohort where you could just kind of let your hair down. It was very, very practical in nature, and I'll go through some of the various details. People appreciated it. It was rusty because it was put together in the very beginning. Again, the network I utilized, I have access to the NAS board, to Pearl. Everybody I called, they came. I had a whole bunch of people work for free, and to truly share all they know and try to navigate a path for folks. The program grew from about 10 to about 15 to about 25. Last year we had about 30, and at this point I'm actually going to cut it back to about 25. And as you can imagine, the cohort gets stronger and stronger. There's about 87 folks who've gone through the program now. At least 10 to 15 actually are division heads or academic deans or what have you. And it's not simply because of the program, but they have a network, they have a way to access the system, and they know whom to call when they negotiate a contract, what have you. You can go to the next slide, please. This is a busy slide, and I'm going to make sure I send it to you. I'm not going to read all of this, but the power with the program actually is you have to have a strong core faculty. As you can see, it's a huge core faculty. And, we have actually 3 different tracks. Okay? One thing we found out is not everybody wants to be head of school. Not everybody wants to be a division head. A lot of diversity, or a lot of people happen to be in a diversity position at times. So what we have a track that really looks at diversity practitioners and how can you be successful within your school, within the framework that you have. We have another track of folks who are moving into the administrative role, and then we have another track for heads of school. We have mentoring circles, we have branding exercises. Oftentimes people don't realize how wonderful and strong and competent they are. So we have this branding exercise we do, like where are you the same and where are you different, right? So if I were to brand myself, there's things that I have that other people actually don't have. And is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Or how can I use that? Noni talked a little bit about mentors. We talk a lot about mentors and sponsors, right? And mentors will be helpful, but a sponsor actually takes you by the hand and says, you know what, go to Savannah School, the Galloway School in Atlanta. I'll make sure that she will return your phone call. You have to figure out different types of people who can help you. You have to understand the independent school landscape. There are things you just don't know because, if I were to read a quick book that all of you should read, and then you would know 95% more than the rest of the books in your schools is the trend book, the NAS trend book. And I'm sure Pearl has all kinds of wonderful resources also. You want to understand the system. How does the school actually work? It's amazing to have a cohort of folks. I can't quite explain it. Pearl, you must have the same with your programs, but the group grows. Their minds grow, they become more competent, they become more confident, and there's something magical, it's probably a little bit too much, but there's something that happens that suddenly clicks. I am smart, I am wonderful, I can navigate this, and I have a whole group of folks who are willing and able to help. You want to take a richer lens of technology. One thing we do at our institute, we use a Google Plus environment. So folks actually get to know one another beforehand. I put my folks into all kinds of uncomfortable positions. Why do I do that? It's not easy to be head of school. It's not easy to be a diversity practitioner. It's not easy to be a division head. There are times you're going to have some very uncomfortable. We do town shows. We force people to speak in front of other folks. And what I do every year, every person who's been through my program has gone to teach from yoga. 90 minutes, 105 degrees, sweating together, and people are scared. They do it, but it's like a marathon. Anybody can run a marathon. Right? It's one step at a time, and you go there. I've run 3, by the way. So, you know, it's practical. We go through resumes. We have search consultants come in and literally look at your resume and say, you don't need a 5-page resume. You know, get it on a page. This is how you write a cover letter. This is how you interview. This is how you present yourself. So lots of practical information. And again, most importantly is if you want to, you have a lifeline for the rest of your life, literally. And there's some folks, they don't, but other folks, you know, obviously come in and take advantage of that. I'll do the last slide, but I think, you know, the information is there, and we'll make sure that we send the slideshow to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Dennis. And I've had the privilege of participating, and it's just a very electric experience to be there. So thank you for including me, and thank you for the work you do. Noni's program, the Interschool Leadership Institute, is also a program that actually visits Teachers College, and I love when they come every year, and the excitement that I feel building. I think it's how old is your program?
2013.
Wow,
That's when we had our first cohort.
Yeah, so we're entering our third year. Yeah, that's great. Well, could you tell us about your program, please?
Sure. As I said, Interschool Leadership Institute was founded in 2013, and the inspiration came from Dennis here. I was at his inaugural program in Connecticut, and I knew when he articulated that his dream was to see programs like this all over the country. I wanted to be the next one. I wanted it to be in New York. I had done CSTI. I felt like this was the next iteration of developing educators of color in independent schools, and the leadership piece was so important and key. For me, the leadership piece was more about developing a leadership mindset for educators of color, apart from the position you might have. So I mentioned my experience at Penn with leadership and emotional intelligence. So the focus of the program for me really clicked around thinking about how do we develop the social and emotional competencies that are necessary for transformational leadership. Those competencies are great for every leader of every color, but I think they have particular resonance and impact for educators of color working in predominantly white environments. The self-awareness is so key. The emotional management piece is really key. And those are the spaces that we work in over the week that we're together. I was lucky to be able to partner with Kathy Kramer and Interschool here in New York to develop this program. And the fact that Interschool wanted to seed this, support it, market it, and just have kind of Kathy's energy behind it has been really important in developing it. Dennis's support, Pearl's support, again, and that's a community of folks that I connected with in 1996. The long line of kind of networking that Dennis talks about that you have forever, I've experienced that firsthand, and this program is a part of that. So our program is a week long. It's here in New York City. We have, again, do a cohort of 16 to 20 educators. That cohort model, I think, is really a key to programs like this. Folks that kind of go through a week together, intense time together, time to get to know one another, be vulnerable, open up. It's really important to the success of the program. The schedule is up, and the thinking behind the structure of it is that we move from the inside out over the course of the week, and that's an intentional design. So we start with kind of grounding ourselves in the content of leadership and emotional intelligence. But our work over the course of the week is that each member develops their own leadership vision plan. So they leave with kind of a concrete plan for how they're going to take their next step. I say we're a program that specializes in next steps of kind of what we do. A lot of folks who apply or talk about, like, I think I'm here, I don't know if I'm here, but I'm thinking about my next step. I'm like, we're the program for you. And we incorporate work time over the course of the week so that you have the gift of time to reflect, to think, and to write the plan, which I'll talk about on the Friday is presented. So as we're moving from the inside out, knowing your leadership style has to do with Myers-Briggs and your personality and understanding who you are in interaction with others who have different personality types or the same. Difficult conversations is, I think, a huge and important leadership skill that involves role-playing for us. A big part, I think, of self-awareness and emotional management and relationship management is about telling your story. And we have a very powerful afternoon where we create a space where our cohort members can tell their story. And I don't say a lot about that because you have to experience it, and the power of it is kind of in the room. But it's the point where really things click for the group and we really, are ready to roll. And from then, we move into a really powerful day-long workshop with Dr. Howard Stevenson from the University of Pennsylvania. A big piece, as I said, in terms of folks of color working in independent schools, I think is the emotional management piece. Howard does a lot of work around racial stress management. And there, again, are role plays that happen and really great advice from a clinical psychologist to really talk about what it means for us to work in these schools and developing concrete strategies for how to navigate these spaces, keeping ourselves intact through that. And as we're moving outward, we start thinking about, this is who I am, this is how I understand myself, now what am I going to kind of do with that? And we talk about leading without a formal leadership position. That's a workshop that Jose de Jesus, who's the upper school head at Packer Collegiate, design, inspired by a workshop he saw you do, Pearl, around that, and really works with folks thinking about how they are going to take that next step. What are they seeing in their school environment that they feel they can have an impact on, but also speaks to their core values, what they're good at, what they're excited and passionate about. Gender leadership was something that emerged out of the fact that in our first cohort we had 2 men. And a cohort of 16, and we always have much fewer men in our cohorts than we do women. We want to talk about that dynamic. We want to dig into that dynamic and what gender and leadership means, that intersectionality of gender and race and ethnicity in leadership, and we've carved out space for that. Dennis talked about the importance of mentorship and sponsorship as folks are thinking about their next steps in leadership path. It's a key conversation. I don't think I would be where I am now without that and the environments that I've been a part of and the networks that I'm a part of. And lastly, the last day is kind of a really, I think cathartic moment where folks declare the vision that they've been working on. And we think it's really important to actually declare it in front of a group. Not only to kind of, commit yourself to your vision, but that you have folks that you're accountable to. So folks who have said, I'm going to have this role by this time, we have folks who are on, Facebook with those folks. How are you doing with that? You said you're going to do this. Here's someone to call and think about when you said you're going to do that. And it's so great every summer to hear updates from our members about the moves that they're making on their leadership plans. They mean so much to them. They're so invested in them. And it's a very powerful moment to have them declare that in front of each other. And going to Klingenstein is a part of that journey as well as far as thinking about next steps. So the information here, and we'll have cards on the table about the application process. And any questions, I'll be here to answer as well.
Thank you very much, Nani. Susanna, Genesee's program is just about to start, right?
So one of the great things about being a head of school is you get to be confident about things in the future that haven't happened yet, that might go belly up. But they won't, because this is this is fabulous work, and I feel very confident that it will be a success, but I'm definitely in the plagiarism stage where I, copy, borrow ideas. I'm sitting right here realizing I didn't know enough about Noni's program, so there'll be elements of hers appearing in Atlanta this summer. Some of the inspiration for BOLD came from my time at Klingenstein last January. I felt as if Klingenstein invested 2 weeks in me. And what was I actually doing for my profession? Well, at first blush you could think, I'm pretty new to my profession. I'm year 4 as a school head. I don't look anything like my peers in Atlanta, either by gender or race. And so really, what could I bring to the table? And I thought a bit more about it, and I realized that I can bring an awful lot to the table. And Dennis was certainly a huge inspiration in that respect. I participated as part of his core faculty at his institute last summer, and I realized just how much one could impact people in a very short amount of time. It was a 4-day experience, and yet people from the Monday to the Thursday grew in confidence, and by the end of the week were ready to go off and champion something new. And so I realized I could make a splash as well, or I hope I can. And sadly, Atlanta needs it, which is horrifying really when you think about the demographic makeup of that city, 70% African American. And yet the leadership is not there, at least not in private schools. The public schools have extraordinary leadership of people of color, but it does not mirror in private schools. So I'm going to try and do my bit. I'm not alone. There are 5 school heads in Metro Atlanta, people of color, so it's quite nice to not go into this completely alone, and I've actually co-opted 2 of them already to be part of the core faculty in Atlanta, which is exciting. We are targeting about 20 people also, and we're looking at 2 tracks. The folks who are hoping to leave the classroom for the first time ever, really to sort of, maybe a department head position or a junior leadership role, and then people who are seeking a seat at the big table, if you like, so senior leadership. Those two tracks. And we'll see how the applications end up panning out, but that's really our hope at this point. We will be, just as you've been hearing from both of these 2 programs to my left, looking to really create a supportive network, and I've seen the power of that already, actually, in contact still with 3 or 4 people from Dennis's Institute this summer, and I'm sort of on the hook for calling them every month and saying, remember how you talked about doing your LinkedIn profile? Let me see it. And the power of that has been really good. One of them's been for an interview at a school. I recommended her for a position, and she's been for a division head interview. She wasn't successful, but it was a great experience. And actually, I had one of the participants interview with me for a high school principal position. He wasn't selected, but again, I think he feels as if it was a really powerful experience, and those connections are powerful. So I'm really keen to build that network and that cohort. The leadership curriculum is key. I anticipate quite a lot of pre-reading. We've been very, very fortunate. We have a local foundation in Atlanta which has decided to kick us a big amount of money to help underwrite the costs. And so we're going to be able to share materials quite liberally with participants. And it also means that we are able to provide 7 free slots, so merit-based scholarships to Atlanta. And by the way, we have built-in free Bikram yoga, because if you run anything in July in Atlanta, if you step outside a building, it's 105 degrees. So, we won't be going to do Bikram, but there'll be something of that nature, because, again, that was a great experience. Watching people do something right outside of their normal experience is good. Another aspect of Dennis's program that I really liked, he had involved a lot of his board members and other people from his community who have nothing to do with education, but who shared their leadership journeys. And I think that's an important part of knowing, it doesn't look the same in every single profession, but there are hallmarks to leadership that we can learn and apply in different settings. So I feel very bold sharing a sample schedule when we don't have one yet, but this is sort of where we're thinking we're going to start each day with a session on independent schools, because to Dennis's point, if you don't know the climate in which you're working as a minority, there is a majority culture, and it's not always easy to understand. So there'll be a half an hour at the beginning of every day sort of dedicated to that, bringing people up to speed on the landscape. We anticipate a full group session every day, and then break out into the 2 tracks. We think role playing is a very important part of this. If you have practiced doing something, the first time I had to ask someone to leave, I sat down with my HR director and we went through it. We practiced it. And she said, "You're not tall enough. This guy is huge. What are you going to do? Pump your chair up." This is great advice. And by the time it actually came around to asking this person to leave the school, it ended up being a very gracious experience, and it wasn't something that I feared. So that role playing is a big part of what I want to bring to Bold. And in the afternoon, like Noni, I think we think it's important that people sit down and reflect and really get an opportunity to digest, perhaps emotionally as well as professionally, what it is that they have experienced throughout the day. I think that pretty much sums it up. Those are some of the details, and Bold, for what it's worth, is not just a great word and what it is that we hope to do, but it's building opportunities for leadership development. It's an acronym. We're calling it Bold Atlanta for a reason. We're hopeful, and the foundation that supported us is also hopeful that we take this on the road, that it might be hosted in one of your schools in the future, that as long as we can find a host school, we might take a core faculty and move it around. So I think that would tick Dennis's box of, reaching others and spreading around. And there's information on the table over there. Thank you. Dennis.
I'm going to say that 20 seconds. Stephen Morris he's an African-American head of school at Census Day School. He and Allison Park, who is the diversity practitioner out there, they also have a program that has run for a couple of years. And I'm not going to do it this year because his school is going through its reaccreditation process, but next year again. It's a slightly different format because they meet with a cohort like 3 or 5 hours, multiple times during the year, but that's another initiative.
Great. Well, it's so wonderful listening to each of you is how the program is of yourself, that you bring the gifts of your strengths, of your own stories, what has worked for you. And I also commend that, I hear words like self-confidence, knowledge, self-awareness, emotional intelligence. Whether you decide you want to move up the administrative hierarchy or just want to have more leadership opportunities in the role that you are, teachers can be extremely powerful. These programs can be very helpful to you, and we all know if we've had a wonderful teacher that you never forget the power of that teacher. So particularly in the context of the Klingenstein Center, we value the teacher leader as much as we value the school leader. And I'm so glad that you're recognizing that in your programs. Susanna?
And so if I may, on that note, what's nice about this is, of course, I'm not doing this alone. No head of school ever does the work. They have a great team behind them. And in Atlanta, I have a steering committee, and it's been great to bring in one of my teacher leaders. He is really coming together and helping think about this as part of his Klingenstein master's program. So it's been great work for him. It's an opportunity for him to sit down once a week with his head of school. I've also got someone from another school involved and one of my assistant principals. So we've got a nice little network within the school, even there's leadership emerging around the creation of this leadership program. So that's been a nice sort of side benefit, if you like.
Well, thank you so much. We as a center have always worked hard to support leaders of color. And it isn't that we're being nice. It's that, just think of the world. If we had tapped the talents of all people, we would have a much better world. We would be more advanced in science, in politics. If you marginalize groups, you lose the talents of whole groups. And that has happened in our society. So the programs that you're doing really are to build the strengths of people. Sometimes they don't even recognize it themselves, but you can as someone who has worked with many people and because of your own emotional intelligence and strength. So it's very exciting to hear these programs. But we all know that it isn't easy to be a person of color in an independent school or in any situation in which you're not part of the dominant race. So what challenges do you face as a leader of color, and how do you deal with that? Because you all obviously have dealt with it, and I'm sure you all face some challenges. So does anyone want to share their experience? Dennis?
No, it's interesting. I think once you attain the position as head of school, you're kind of you're on top of the heap. I thought I would encounter some challenges, but I actually didn't. When I first became a head of school, and I was acting head before at the Shady Hill School and became a SMAS, I wondered whether I would be a successful fundraiser. Yeah, I thought, I'm going back to the 70s and 80s and 60s and what have you. There are folks who lived in a very different era, different thought processes, and would these folks hand over big dollars to this brown boy, right? And it was very interesting. I've actually never felt anything like it. In fact, I've had interesting conversations with folks about I was the first Catholic student, I was the first Jewish student, I was the first gay student, and the fact that the school has evolved has been very interesting. As an individual of color, you wonder, what kind of people think and how they interpret things, what have you. But I have to say, in the 10 years I've been at KO, it hasn't been if anything, people I think that, this guy, he's Danish, he's a person of color, he's tall, he's adopted. I think people just don't quite know, what to do with me sometimes. And, you can't hide your accent. But I think at one point I was very conscious about my accent and I wasn't American, what have you. But all of that stuff, I just let it go. I think one piece of advice maybe is there's very little stuff that fazes me. Like, I don't actually stay up at nighttime. I don't worry about stuff. Like, you deal with it in the moment and you move on. I don't hold grudges. People may have done something stupid, but it's like that doesn't reflect negatively on the person. It's like, here's something stupid, let's put that aside or deal with it. So I think I'm beyond it. Maybe it's that I'm 54, I don't know.
Yeah, I haven't reached that transcendence that Dennis not quite yet. And I think for me, I think Susanna touched upon it. There's an intersection of race and gender for me that still sits quite heavily when thinking about leadership and being a person of color. And I don't know. I think in the world that we live in, it's not kind of things that are in your face that happen day to day, but it's that question that always sits in the background when you're disrespected in a way by a parent or a colleague, and you're wondering, would that person have said that or done that if I was white or if I was a man? And because that question sits there, that kind of can influence reactions and interactions. And so I think why I keep coming back to emotional intelligence and how important it is for leaders, particularly leaders of color, because I think in predominantly white environments, that question sits for us. And if we kind of keep getting stuck into that and not kind of managing what we need to around that, then we aren't going to be very effective. We aren't going to be moving into the positions that we want to. So I think acknowledgement is important of that, of what sits there for us is really important. And I think that the networks that we have are important in connecting and having the am I crazy conversation with somebody that you can trust is really key. And I also think, not to privilege New York so much, but I think that, there are challenges in terms of what you see in front of you, in terms of what you can see. To be in a city as diverse as we are and to not see the diversity and headship that, you see in other parts of the country is really, it's distressing to me. So thinking about our programs and my program as ways to impact that system is another way that I kind of push through some of the challenges that I've talked about, to feel that you can be successful in supporting other folks out there and educators out there who are experiencing some of the things that I experienced in my past or are experiencing now is really how I kind of deal with the challenges that I still face.
Thank you, Nodi.
So Nodi's right, the gender piece is as relevant for me as race. Remember, my first, I was a high school principal at this point. I remember one of the early meetings, a parent coming in and saying, looking around the room saying, well, is the principal here yet? I've got a meeting starting soon. And I said, yeah, principal's here, so let's get going. And the person looked around and said, well, where is he? That was a bit of a, kick to the gut. And I just thought it would get better, but when I became a head of school, the first head of school meeting I walked into, so this is me and my peers in Atlanta, I walked in and the first question given to me was, are you here to take notes? And I'm kind of sassy, so I responded, well, if the meeting is interesting, yes, I might get my book out and I might write some things down. But it horrified me that would be the first question. And then they went on to say, well, you do realize this is a meeting for heads of school. And so there really was, not just one, but two swipes at really, do you belong in the room? So that was interesting. The same meeting, they then did an update of the football scores and we had a prayer. So it does tell you something about the region in which I'm working, which is, I've chosen to do that. So I realize that I have accepted a lot of the landscape in which I work. Some people are more diplomatic than I am. I guess with the challenges that I face, you have a choice. Do I suck it up and, am I gracious like Dennis and let things go and don't hold grudges? I don't think I hold grudges, but I do take my opportunities to try and set people straight. And I probably get away with a murder in some respects because my English is not like other people's. So they're willing to take a little bit more from me in the first meeting than they might otherwise. But I've been okay with burning bridges over the years. And that's not advice you'll hear from everybody. They'll say, make sure you leave every school in great shape and you never know where your next job is coming from. I've been much more, it's been more important for me to be true to myself. And if it's important that you understand who I am racially and who I am ethnically and my whole baggage, and then so be it. And you will not disrespect that along the way. And luckily I found the right school for me because they accept me for who I am and they want me to be who I am and I can be my authentic self every single day. So the challenges for me have made me a stronger, perhaps more confident human being and I found the place that I need to be. So that helps.
And one never knows. When I first came to New York City, I applied for a teaching job and it was such a demeaning interview. I sort of crawled out of there feeling awful. It just reduced me. Years later, that same school built a new building, and they asked me to be the keynote speaker. And I remember standing on the dais. It was actually outside on the street, and I was giggling to myself while I was giving my talk. So you never know, with a personal satisfaction that, you may come back. You may have a hard time in one respect, but come back as the exalted speaker. So I want to ask you one last thing, and that is what piece of advice, you've given lots of good advice and good personal experiences. If you had to leave our audience here and those who are kind enough to listen with one piece of advice, what would that be? Give you a minute to think about it.
That's the former president of NAS said, hire happy people. And you know what, for the other ones. If you are not you don't have to be happy all the time. But if you are a complainer, everything is hard, if you need to talk out of the water cooler, maybe it probably isn't for you.
I think it's what Susanna mentioned about being your authentic self. And I've gotten that advice going on interviews, and I've gotten that advice in workshops. And for folks of color in these environments, sometimes it's hard to be your authentic self. You think you leave pieces of yourself at the door in order, in some ways, to kind of survive and navigate. So some of us learn that lesson or piece of advice later along our journeys, and as early as folks can learn that lesson and take that advice, I think is important in terms of being who you are, speaking your truth. And I think a lot of what our programs help folks do is find ways to help people be themselves, speak their truth, and still keep their job. So that sticks with piece of advice sticks with.
Thank you, Noni. Susanna?
I would say just make your intentions known to your school. If you seek, leadership, make sure somebody knows and looks out for you. And I'm always amazed at the numbers of people that said, well, I would have quite liked that position. You didn't apply, you didn't tell anybody, those kinds of things. So state your intentions to somebody who can help you along the way.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Susanna Dempsey. Thank you, Tony Thomas Lopez and Dennis Discard, and particularly Jessica Shepke for organizing this. And thank you to our listeners. We very much appreciate that you are all here with us today as our first effort of this kind, and I wish all of you the best of luck. Thank you. So, thank you. So now, for those of you who are here, we have food. So please join us. Pete, where is the food? Is it next door? This is Pete Simpson, the guy I talked about who solves all problems.
Yes. You solve any problem.